Gamers? I'm Jason.
And I'm Julie.
And we are Dice and Dragons. Today we are going to be reviewing Hellboy The Boardgame. Now the game is published by Mantic Games in conjunction with Dark Horse Comics, and it is designed by James M. Hewitt and Sophie Williams. You can tell, well, for those of you that do know the game, this is the Kickstarter edition. There's some logos on there. You might be able to see from the top. Well, Julie's hiding behind it. Now,
it's a big box.
It is a big box. The reason this box is so massive is because it includes 2 expansions, the BPRD Mission Archive files, I might have said that wrong, and the Conqueror Worm expansion. So they all come in this box. There's also some upgraded components. With that being said, I'm going to let Julie tell you more about the game itself.
So it's a cooperative game, 1 to 4 players. Plays in about 60 to 90 minutes. I'd say it's most of the time closer to 90 minutes.
Oh no, we got through some missions.
We got through one in 60 minutes, so I guess it's 60.
It was 45 minutes. And even the last one that was medium length was only an hour. I definitely say this falls closer to the 60-minute mark.
And it's 14 and above.
So what do you think about the age range?
You might be able to get away with a 12-year-old, but I think it's probably the right age range.
I think it makes sense more because of the content, since it's Hellboy, obviously. Now, for those of you that don't follow the channel, just to let you guys know, we are definitely into geeky things. Now, our knowledge of Hellboy and Mike...
Speak for yourself.
Hey, how many... You wanted to see Endgame twice, almost in the same weekend, so...
Okay, but to call me a geek...
Said into geeky things. I did not say you were a geek.
Okay, so anyways, continue.
Okay, she threw me off a little bit there. So, as I was saying, we are not the most familiar with Mike Mignola's Hellboy universe. I've read, I think, 1 comic, not that much, but we do know the movies, which is why we decided to pick up the game. That being said, let's just talk quickly about the game. What are you doing? Well, you are a BPRD agent, and you take on the roles of the famous BPRD investigators. So you can be Hellboy, Liz Sherman, Johan, or Abe Sapien. Those are the 4 that come in the base game. What you're then going to be doing is investigating and trying to solve a case. And you will actually be, doing some work to gather some information and actually solve the case. So there's a map. You're moving around the board, engaging with minions, trying to find clues, and then defeat the big bad. I think I summarized it fairly well.
I think so.
So what time is it, Julie?
It's time to grab our drinks from behind this huge
game. We gotta lift it all the way up. Grab our best friend. And we're gonna take it to the table.
Yeah, that was my line, but yes, we'll take it to the table.
So who do you want to play?
Well, I would say Hellboy, but that's not gonna happen.
No, I'm definitely Hellboy.
So there's a girl on fire, I think, so...
Liz Sherman, you remember her? I forget the actress's name. She's been in quite a few things. I'm slipping my mind.
I'm going to admit right now that I can't even remember the movie. So, but I'm going to say there's a girl on fire, so I'll play her. And if there's another badass, excuse my language, then I'll play that character. You'll get to play Hellboy.
Now we're going to take a look at the components for the Kickstarter edition of Hellboy the Boardgame. Now, in this Agent Pledge, which came in a giant box, as you all saw, there are actually 2 expansions included in the base game box. We have the Conqueror Worm expansion, as well as the BPRD mission files and the Kickstarter exclusives. Because of that, we're going to have to do this in multiple parts, and that means we're going to do a playthrough / how to play with the game in a separate video. I'm going to do a quick overview of the gameplay and include that in our review video. That being said, we got a lot of components to cover. Sometimes it can take me longer than I would like. So let's dive in. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with the components that are actually sitting on top of other components because there's just so much stuff. We'll start with the Deck of Doom. So the Deck of Doom, you've got a whole slew of different cards. As you can see, there are different symbols at the top, some relating to agents, others relating to different symbols, and depending on the case that you're trying to solve, is going to tell you what you need to include in that deck. And you'll notice we have those for pretty much all of the different BPRD agents. And if you're wondering what expansion they're from, you can see right down there in the bottom corner, this Racked with Guilt one does correspond to one of the BPRD agents from the expansion, and it's from the Conqueror Worm expansion. So now that we've just taken a quick look at the deck of Doom, there are also some more difficult cards that were included in the Kickstarter. Not quite sure which is which. That's one of the unfortunate things about the game, is that the rulebook is really just a retail version of the rulebook. Doesn't give you a good detail as to what's in the Kickstarter edition. I'm going to move this off camera, and since I'm moving that off camera and we just mentioned the rulebook, let's take a look at the rulebook that we got in the box. We have two that came in the box, a tutorial, which the game suggests that you read first, which gives you a quick rundown of how to play Hellboy the board game, going with the first case file. It also gives you some nice visual representations as to where to place things. It's well made, very well done. And then we've got Hellboy the board game, the rule book, and it's got everything that you would need for the retail edition of the game. So just from what I have out here, what you're seeing in the rule book doesn't quite match everything that that we got in terms of content. I'm going to put that aside, and let's get back to what we have in front of us. We also have the encounter deck. Now, you're not going to use all of these cards. As you saw from the tutorial, the maps aren't that big. There are symbols here at the bottom of each card to tell you which case they're going to be used with. Even then, you may only be using some of them. So, for example, you'll shuffle them up and just deal out one or two depending on what you need. You also see, once again, the symbol to denote which expansion they're from. So we've got a whole slew of different encounters. And just to quickly explain how these encounters work, you'll notice that there are 4 spaces. The largest rooms have 4 spaces in them, meaning like room 1, 2, 3, and 4. So you just place that out in there. If you've got a smaller room, this one here actually is the starting tile, so you will never be placing anything on that. I'll just actually take this off camera now since I got to explain it. But on these doubles rooms, you would put 1 and 2 in here, and then 3 and 4 in here, whichever one is closest to the agent that has explored the room. We've gone through these encounter cards. Let's take them off camera, and let's look at the other things that are sticking out right now, the scenery. Now, scenery are things that can potentially be interacted with, depending on what they are. For example, this bookcase or cabinet may be something you need to investigate. Typically, anything that you can interact with is outlined in yellow to signify that it's different from standard scenery. Scenery also takes up room in the rooms, meaning you can have less characters. This counts as 3 spaces. Each room can have a total of 6 characters and scenery in it. This one counts as 2. This one counts as 4. Then we also have the pit, which means it's a space that you cannot go through. Now, we'll get rid of these pieces of scenery. We'll have cleaned up the board a bit, and we're going to keep going. And now I'm going to move left to right across. So here we've got our HQ board, where you're going to be placing your case files, deck of doom, encounter cards. You've got 2 trackers. We've got upgraded trackers, so I'll showcase them afterwards, which will be tracking the doom. And then this is going to be tracking the information gathered as you're trying to gain clues to solve the case. Here's where you're going to track target priority. And you do that with these counters down here. That's why you've got the 4 different colors, the bases, the action cubes, which will attach to the miniatures based on what BPRD agent you're playing. Also, you have the flip side of this board where you're going to have the boss card. As you can see right here, it could be the Conqueror Worm. And then you have the boss behavior deck. And let me just slide that down because going through this in a way that's organic is something I actually like. So the boss behavior deck, once again, has different symbols depending on the boss. You can see here on the boss card the symbols that you need to add in to the deck for the boss that you'll be fighting. You've got them. And once again, just lots of different symbols. You also have some new rules for some new miniatures that show up in some of the expansions. And you can see the boss behavior deck symbols on the back. Well, art's on the back matches the art on the board. So we're just going to put that back, and then we'll pick this back up for the last thing that I want to highlight. It's the same on the HQ side as on the confrontation side. You've got the minions in play, the minions that you're going to be fighting in the mission, and then this in play area across the top to place different case file cards that are in play. Now, you might be wondering what the enemy minion cards look like. Well, we looked at the Conqueror Worm. We've got some of them here. So from the Conqueror Worm expansion, we've got the Nazi Riflemen, Nazi Officers. From the base game, Rampaging Frog Monsters. We've got also some of the big bad bosses like Rasputin's Ghost, Giant Frog Monster, St. Leonard's Worm, Baba Yaga, Ulak. A bunch of these are also Kickstarter exclusives. And these are all the different enemies that you can fight. We'll take a look at their miniatures in more detail. Not trying to remember the name of all of them, but I'm going to do my best. Now, back on our path from left to right, you saw the basis for your characters, the action cubes, because each character has 3 actions. So we're going to go over here and take a look at the backup agent tokens. So you've got tokens to represent the backup agents that come in the base game. You can see some of the backup agent cards here, which can be used as remote support and direct support, fighting with you with a health status and an action that they can take. But you also notice we've got some backup agents like Pancake Hellboy and Trevor Buttonholm, Kate Corrigan. Well, Kate Corrigan actually has a backup agent token, but you can also use her miniature, as she's also a playable character in the Kickstarter exclusive version if you so choose. So if you're wondering, guys like Pancake's Hellboy, no token, has a miniature for you to use. Now, we've got these point of interest tokens here that are going to show up during certain campaigns. You'll have to interact with them, which will cost an action. They'll trigger different things. This is the starting area token, which are used to denote where you started out in the game. And then we just have some black cubes. These are marker tokens that are used for a variety of different things during your game. Here we've got doors, which denote different areas. Typically, a door is going to be between a 4 and a 2, like that. I'll flip it that side. You might even have 2 doors. Don't have to open them. It just means that when you go through it, you're probably having an encounter. Now, put the doors back. We have these different markers which are used to mark different things that are in play and when they will happen. You know, so you have 2 A's. Reason for that is you might put an A on the Doom track here, then one on a case file card that would then be up here in the in play area. When you get to a certain spot, that card would trigger. So we've got enough of them to trigger multiple different effects depending on the case that you're playing. And then here we have the custom die, and we've got a lot more than just this, but the way that the dice work is they go from yellow, orange, red to black, black being the strongest. There are mechanics to upgrade and downgrade the dice, and then you sort of have the effect die right here, which can end in a wild times 2, some extra hits, a reroll, or potentially a catastrophe, which means bad things will happen. Now, I'm just going to put these back. As we've now taken a look at the die, target party stuff's pretty simple. Goes here and corresponds to the base of your player. Now, I'm not going to go through all the tiles. We'll just pick some of them up to show you, but I want to make clear that there are quite a lot of tiles with 2-room tiles. They are all double-sided. One side looks like it's an ancient ruins. The other one kind of looks like a lodge or a cabin. Some of them actually do have electricity and wiring on it as well. And same thing goes for these large 4-square tiles. You've got a variety, and even the ones that look like you're in the lodge. Now, put these back, and let's move over to the components that I think most people are excited about. We've got our player characters, and we get a whole whack of them in the Kickstarter edition, starting with Hellboy, Liz Sherman, of course, Ape Sapien, Johann Kraus. So these are the 4 that are available in the base game. In the Kickstarter version of the game, some of these are exclusive, some of them are from expansions. We get the Visitor, Roger, Pancakes Hellboy, Trevor, Lobster Johnson, Horned Hellboy, Kay Corrigan, Scott Clark, Bud Waller, and Sidney Leach. Now we're going to take a look at all of the miniatures for these characters. As you can see, we've got quite a few characters. And before that, though, let's take a look at the other things we have here. We've got all of the starting cards up there, sorry. So starting cards denoted by saying starting card. You can see what character it's for, and then the effect of the card. So each character typically has 2 or potentially more starting cards, depending on if they have a tracker or not. So Johann Kraus is the sidearm and just the tracker. You may actually have a guy with 3, but I'm pretty sure they're all 2. Actually, that was just a mistake on my part. My apologies. So everyone has their 2 starting cards. We've got the requisition deck, which you can be purchasing from. So you get different kinds of items like stun grenade. You know, some of them are double-sided. That means you use it once, flip it over, you can use the card again. So there's a whole slew of different things that are in the deck. Some can be ammo upgrades. Some do other things. Don't have the time to go through all of this stuff. Now, let's move on over to the miniatures. And probably my favorite part of the game is just how detailed these minis are. Take a look at the incredible job they've done on Hellboy. I absolutely adore this miniature. We've got Liz Sherman here. Another great looking mini. Here we've got Johann Kraus. I just love all the little details that you can see on his suit. Abe Sapien with the gun and the spear. The Visitor. A little tricky in the back. We then got Roger, who looks really good as well. And I love how the BPRD jackets all look fairly similar. Pancakes Hellboy. This cool little guy. The one who started himself, Trevor Bunholm. We've got Lobster Johnson right here. This is another great one, the horned version of Hellboy. And his stuff is not exactly the same as Hellboy's himself. We'll take a quick look at the character sheet again shortly. Kate Corrigan, her miniature. Scott Clark. And if I forget any of these guys' names, I do apologize, doing my best. And yeah, see, there we go at the end. I think this is Bud. And it's not Trevor, but I'm drawing a blank on the character's name. Just so many minis to keep track of. And then here we've got the wound tokens, which will be placed there on the card. Now, once the sheet is filled, you flip it over and it negatively affects your stats. So this negative cube means -1 action cube. Those can be healed in different ways. Let's just take a quick look at the character sheet. So you've got special rules for the characters. There are unique actions that only they can do. Their starting cards listed right here. And then the type of dice that they're going to be testing when they test dice. So you can see melee attack is red. His shoot is yellow. Examine is orange. And defense is orange. Now, we've gone ahead and done it. Oh, almost forgot. We have the BPRD case files. Now, there are 3 packs that I did not have out here because they weren't still sealed. I wanted to show you how they came. You'll notice that each of these case files is sealed. So there is 3 of them that you get in the Kickstarter edition, plus an additional 5 for a total of 8 case files, plus the case file construction system that lets you randomize your case files. So we've done it. We've taken a look at the first wave of our Hellboy components. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up and we're going to come at you with wave 2. Hopefully we get it done in 2 waves and it doesn't take us 3. Now let's take a look at the second part of the components for Hellboy the board game, the Kickstarter edition of the game. in effect, the Agent Pledge. Now, I actually was able to fit the enemy cards out there, so I'm going to use that to help myself reference what some of these components are. But with that being said, let's start with the components that are over here. Now, you may have noticed this in the part one of my components, but I didn't showcase it. Each of the heroes that is going to be in the base game and in the Conqueror Room expansion has their own bust. I'm not sure if these were Kickstarter exclusives or not, but I did get these in the game. So we get Hellboy, we've got Abe Sapien right here, we've got Johann Kraus, Liz Sherman, Lobster, and Roger. Now, I'm not quite sure what this is. It may be an enemy card. We also have a turkey. So, haven't quite played through with all the expansion content as of yet. And then the next set of components that we've got are the upgraded Kickstarter components. Here we've got the upgraded insight tokens. Now, these went from being just standard tokens in the base game to plastic components. I don't believe these were upgraded. They're just in the same spot. My apologies. We have the upgraded Inferno tokens. So now they're a nice translucent fire instead of just a token. We've got the Frog Swarms, and I've got two of them out here because it's only when two of them that are on the board do things start getting a lot more doom and gloom looking like. Now, here we've got the upgraded tracker tokens with a new doom tracking token and the information gathering token. I was looking for these all over the place, as well as the 10 upgraded clue tokens. So you can just see some of what they look like. Hopefully this helps out those of you that also have the Kickstarter edition that were like, where the heck are my clue tokens? So they're all different things instead of just 10 generic tokens. For the life of me, it took me forever to figure out what they were. So we've got some nice sized ones and 3 really small ones, which are definitely useful in terms of board space, but fairly easy to lose. Now let's take a look at the enemies. I want to start with the enemy groups before we really move on to the enemy bosses. So we've got the Nazis here. Now I'm just going to take a look at what the different enemies are. We have the Nazi Rifleman, Nazi Specialist, Knife Fighter, Machine Gunner, and the Officer. Now the Nazis make up this section right here. We can see the Officer miniature. We've got, looks to be the Machine Gunner right here. You've got the Rifleman. This looks to be the Nazi Specialist probably. And here we've got the Knife Fighter. Next, we'll just put these at the back. We've got the Frog Monsters, which come in the base game. Don't think I need the tokens for these. We've got the Cowardly Frog Monster right here. We have the Venomous Frog Monster that actually has a ranged attack. Don't forget, a lot of these Nazis have ranged attacks. This is the Transforming Frog Monster. And then last but not least, we have the Armed Frog Monster here. So those are the frog monsters that come in the base game. We'll move on. We're getting into some of the bosses right here, so I will skip ahead and get to, this looks to be more what I'm looking for. Yeah, well, there's the Evil Turkey actually. So we know what this is. It's a minion. So that's what the turkey's for. There's only one of them. I was looking for the wolf. All right. Now, here we've got the miniatures that come in the BPRD expansion. So we have, quite obviously, wasn't sure, a wolf. So here is the wolf miniature. We then have eagles, birds. So very nasty birds. And let's just double check and make sure we got. So there's evil turkey, werewolves, witch, harpy, bat swarm. And in here somewhere, I'm not going to waste my time looking for it, are the birds. Well, there was also the new rules, don't forget. So the bird information might have been left with those new rule cards. In any case, we've got our witch right here. Once again, all these minis, as you can hopefully see from the camera, are very well detailed. A nice big bad werewolf that we're going to have to fight. A bat swarm. Wonder if they turn into vampires. Haven't read enough Hellboy. And then, of course, the harpy. And that'll take us through really the regular minions. So I'm going to just move that to the back, and we'll use this sort of as a guide to take a look at the other miniatures. So we've got Rasputin's ghost, who is part of the base game. Here is Rasputin, as you can see. A lot of detail on the back, but this guy's tricky. He can't be killed with normal means. After that, we have the giant frog monster, also from the base game. Very detailed mini, you can see with all the different bumps. Looks definitely terrifying. We have, I said hive, I meant to say have, St. Leonard's worm, which is also a very cool miniature. Love how he's wrapped around the statue. I believe this is a Kickstarter exclusive, but we have Baba Yaga or John Wick, if you're a John Wick fan. Very cool. Love the miniature. This one doesn't need a card. It is obviously the giant carrion worm. You'll see this is very solid plastic, so be careful. Don't drop this one on your foot. We've got Ualak, who is a big villain in the Hellboy comics. Not quite sure exactly what his role is, but I love how he's wielding a sword and has two little demon wings. Wonder if he can fly. We've got Iron Maiden Hecate, or Hecate. So there are two versions of her. That's why I was just sliding through the deck. One of them, I believe, is a Kickstarter exclusive. So we've got the two versions of Hecate. They are similar, but definitely some significant differences. We've got Ragnarok Rasputin. So Rasputin looking like he's come back to life and ready to fight, as he's not spectral this time. He is an arcanist. We have Ilsa Humstein, so a military boss, and Ilsa just doesn't quite stand out, but there she is. Looks to be probably one of the bosses of the Nazis, but I could be wrong. Hermann von Klempt, who doesn't love a Nazi that found a way to survive? And I kind of wish that was a bazooka, but I love the walking head. Very steampunk. We've got the tentacles of Sejuem, one of the Ogju Jihad that has been revived. So another very well detailed monster. Scary boss. And we have Rasputin, but you'll notice that this Rasputin comes in the base game. So it's the same miniature, but a different card. Don't forget, you may be using, so I don't mean to say don't forget. It does look like you may be using miniatures over just for different bosses. Keep that in mind. That's where having this image of the miniature comes in handy. We have Karl Ruprecht Cronin, who is a very cool looking Nazi agent. Right there, you can see his miniature. A lot of detail once again. We've almost gone through all these components. We've got Kriegaf, who is, well, it's not a boss. It looks to be a special minion that is far more terrifying than normal. Just trying to figure out where I placed him, but I'm looking at the small guys. He's one of the big guys. Not really sure how this gigantic guy counts as a minion, but there you go. We have the minion, a special minion, the monkey with a gun, and just we got a little Planet of the Apes reference there. Iron Shoes, which is another special minion, one of a kind. Very well detailed. Love the detail on the shoes considering that's his name. And we have the Unmensch, so almost looks like the Ubermensch, but clearly a military super soldier and someone that you don't want to mess with. And then, of course, the Conqueror room, which we already showcased, and we've gone through the enemy deck. So there you have it. There is part 2 of our components for Hellboy. Now, keep it right here. We're going to be back with a quick overview of how to play the game, and then we'll be back finally with our review of Hellboy the board game. Now we're quickly going to take a look at the gameplay of Hellboy the board game. For those of you that want to see a full how to play, we are filming one in the near future. Once that will be available, a card is going to be popping up right about now that should take you to our how to play / playthrough of the game. So how do you play the game? Well, you're going to set up your board, put out your markers, set up your target priority based on the threat level of the characters that you're using. Get your characters, their 3 action cubes, their starting items, and then set up the game board. If you're wondering where I see the game board, well, that's on the back of the case deck, the first card. What you're basically going to do is we get the card, then flip it over, follow the instructions, then you would discard it here. As I don't have a lot of room because I'm doing everything really zoomed in, I'm just going to discard this off camera, and you're going to keep going through the BPRD case file deck. Now this one would actually tell you to take this card and put it in play at the top. We're not doing that, as this is really just a quick overview. Once again, follow the instructions on this card. Then you take a look at this one. So move this card to the in-play area if the agents take time. Flip this card immediately after advancing the impending doom track. Well, you place this right here, and that's really going to be sort of your starting card for this game. We've got our deck of doom. Let's assume that's been set up properly. We've got our encounters. We've got our monsters set up properly. So what can we do in the game? Well, when we're going through a door, if we haven't been through there before, we're going to have to investigate the area. So that is a free action. And what you would then do is you reveal the top card of the encounter deck or the encounter card that is placed in the room. That happens sometimes. We then reveal the card, and then we see what it says. It says Minion B and a clue token, followed by an Inferno, Minion D, and another clue token. So I'm just going to put that right here right now. So we grab Minion B, which is a rampaging frog monster. We need a clue token. I just have the clue tokens in the bag. Didn't want to lose them. So we're going to pop out the 2 clue tokens that we need. Now we're going to place 1 in this space. The way this would work in a larger room would go 1, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4. Any way that you decide it, there's no instructions. However, when you're in a 2-section room, the first space gets Minion 1 and Minion 2. The space closest to the agent that made the exploration investigate action. We're going to place the other clue. Then we need an Inferno and Minion D. So we've got Minion D and the Inferno. So we can now take this, and then it would also go in the discard pile as you see here. For the moment, it's just going to go off camera. So that's the first thing you're going to do in the tutorial. But just to be clear on the phases of the game will start with an enemy phase. Typically, there are no enemies, so you're going to go right into the agent phase. For a handy-dandy reminder, it's all right here on the back of the rulebook. There's your round summary. Then there's a rest phase, which may or may not happen, doom phase, end phase where you reset everything. Now, let's go through the agents phase. Well, we can use our action cubes to perform 3 actions. 1 action would be moving 2 spaces. Now, there are some rules with regards to moving when enemies are in your space. You have to evade them or take them with you. I'm not going to go over that. I just want to give you an example of what a move action is, which is 2 spaces. you may perform one of your actions that you have here, except for defense. Defense is performed automatically if an enemy attacks you. So you may make a melee attack action, a shoot action, or an examine action if you're in the same area as a clue token. Now, there are no turns in this game. For example, it isn't like Hellboy's turn, then Abe Sapien's turn. And sorry that the cards are a little cut off at the bottom with regards to the damage there. Did my best, but I wanted to focus mainly on that. So we need to decide what's going on. Well, Abe Sapien has a gun. He's very good at shooting. And let's do that. Now you can spend an action cube to upgrade your dice. So it can upgrade from red to a black die. Each action cube I spend will let me do that. That's one thing we can do. Not really going to showcase that in our instructional video here. And before I forget, these are enemy damage tokens. I just had forgot to showcase them. They're just red dots really, and you'd place them next to the enemy. So Abe is going to try to clear the way and shoot at the frog monster. Now, if we had any scenery in the space, scenery would take damage first, or we'd have to downgrade our dice if there was any other characters in the space. So if these two guys were together, this would actually be downgraded by 1. So we go from red to orange. In case, let's see what would happen. We'll spend an action cube to take it off our board. Anytime we make a test, it's 3 of the colored dice on your board plus the effect die. Let's see what happens. So in this case, not very good. The catastrophe actually causes lots of bad stuff. We have to, unfortunately, flip over Abe's ranged weapon. And we have to discard our highest attack die. Now this one went off camera there, sorry, the 1. So we have to discard the 2. Now when we're testing for damage, we check the resilience of the monster. This is a rampaging frog monster with a resilience of 2, meaning he did nothing, which is just terrible. Well, Hellboy needs to do something, so Hellboy's going to move in 1 and then spend a second action to fight. Hellboy also fights with red. So let's roll our dice. Hopefully we get something good. And much better. We've got the wild here, which can be anything. So it can be ×2 plus 2 damage. Let us reroll. In this case, if we do ×2, we would do 6 damage. So we've done, the resilience is 2, health is 6. So that would be a total of 4 damage to this frog monster. Place those like that. You then get another attack action. Sorry, that rolled off camera there. Spending our last die, which would be enough to defeat the frog monster. So we would remove him from the board and remove the damage. Hellboy will not be able to act until the next phase. Now it's still Abe Sapien's turn, so we can actually move 1. And just to give you an idea of what we can do, I'm actually going to flip over the harpoon because it says you can flip this card, choose as a ranged weapon, adding 4 to the test score, which is pretty cool. So that's what we're going to do, spending our last action. So we chose only to move 1, not 2. We then will roll our dice. And not very good, but we get +4, meaning we've got a total of 9 damage to the rampaging frog monster, and he would then be defeated. Now, what I'm going to do is not part of the turn. Technically, the agents are done their turn, but let's go through the other basic actions that you can do. You can also do unique actions or use their special rules. This is just a quick overview. So we could make an examination test, for example, if we have a clue in the area. So that would be orange and 3. Now there's other rules to upgrade it. So we make the roll. We get a total of 3. On a total of 3 to 5, the information gather track goes up by 1. If it's a 6 or more, it would go up by 2. So that's what examine would be. Another action that can be taken if you're in the same space as a frog swarm or inferno, you can clear that and get the dangerous obstacle off the board. So those are just the 2 other basic actions, and essentially that's what you're going to be doing in this game moving around. I actually believe when I set this up, I did forget to place a door here, so my apologies. I neglected the door just because this is an example. Let's just imagine that there was a door here just to keep things a little clearer. In case it doesn't really matter. What will then happen is we have the opportunity to rest, take time. When you take time, there's a variety of things that you can do, such as healing, using any backup agents. You also get to then reset your cards. If you have, well, it depends on what it says. The backup apes cards say you can reset them. So that would be part of the rest phase. If we did rest, for example, we would flip this card over and follow what it says, just to go through the proper flow of the game. After the rest phase, we get the Doom phase, where we reveal the top card of the deck of Doom. It says, this card targets the area that contains the most agents. Use target priority if necessary right here. Each agent in that area is targeted by a melee attack with a melee attack value of 6. If they suffer any damage, they are stunned. Oof. Not very fun stuff. We'll just place it on the top here. We'll look at defense. So we can, same space. So Hellboy defends with orange. Ape Sapien defends with yellow. We make the roll. Hellboy actually, luckily, blocks everything. Ape, probably not going to happen, meaning he's going to get stunned. So Ape blocks 3 of the damage. He would only get stunned. We would then add 3 damage to his player board, but just not going to do that because I want to wrap up this quick overview. Then it would restart as there are no enemies on the board. It's going to go into the agent phase. Now, if we hadn't killed everyone and we had the enemies on the board, their cards, as you can see, say Minion, Frog, Cowardly, Minion, Frog, Brawler, Minion, Frog, Range. You will look at the rulebook on page, I believe it's 15, for the enemy phase, and it'll tell you exactly how the enemies will behave. Sorry if it's not coming out clearly, just want to show you the right page. And they would then move and attack us, potentially. So both these guys would move in, and they would attack based on target priority, meaning they would attack Hellboy. They have a fixed damage amount, as you can see on their card. You would just roll defense and then subtract it. In this case, so for example, if it's the armed frog monster, the catastrophe means I lose 1 die. Hellboy would take 5 damage. And that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be moving around these maps, exploring everything until you get to the final confrontation. With that being said, that was a little bit longer than I wanted for an overview, but I think I did a fairly good job. Don't worry, we're going to do a full how to play it. I'll show you everything in the future. Now we're going to get on to a review of the game. So Hellboy the board game. What did you think of the game?
Well, I thought Liz was pretty cool. I enjoyed. I think we played it 2 characters and 4 characters and a 2-player.
Yes.
And I definitely say playing 4 seems to be better than playing 2.
I was gonna say it does feel like the game is more designed for 4 characters, even with the difficulty supposed to scale up as you're playing with 4 characters. I just found that having those actions, and a lot of the time, depending on the card that we pulled, we weren't facing that many more minions, and using the heroes correctly, especially with the right requisitioned equipment.
Yeah.
Just so you guys know, Ancient Spear, Hellboy, I think is a must. Adding 1 range to his fight attack made just like a total difference in how we played the game.
Yeah, and you know, it's important, I think, to use each character's special actions. I think it makes the game a lot more approachable. I think when when I was not using Liz to her full potential, it showed.
No, definitely.
And same thing with Abe. You know, the fact that he can move, he can sprint, he can move through areas that have minions. That definitely helped us out quite a few times when we were trying to get places. So.
Oh, that was fantastic. There was plenty of times where you're like, oh, I don't have to try to evade these guys. I don't have to bring them with me. I can just run through and get to the clue.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool. I mean, I love the flame power.
Oh, you like setting the rooms on fire as well with your flames. She's a little bit of a pyro in this game.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, for that, I enjoyed it. As you said in the beginning, we don't really know the story, but the stories that
Well, I
came
know
out of.
the overall story. I'd
Okay,
say
I don't.
you don't remember it.
Uh, I thought that the story was interesting. It felt pretty thematic with some Nazis, in one campaign, and so that was cool. Actually, I should be wearing my villain shirt because it kind of probably would have been more appropriate for this video, because we are playing what feels like kind of villains that are
Not villains, but we're
kind of being.
definitely anti-heroes.
Yeah.
Well, they're not. Hellboy is, well, Hellboy could potentially be classified as an anti-hero just because of his attitude, and he's not a hero you'd want to look up to, but he's definitely a cool character.
So that being said, if we talk about the game mechanics, I think as I started doing, I enjoyed the dice chucking in this and the 3 actions, and the fact that the characters have each their different special actions and abilities.
Every character feels distinct. The only characters that I noticed that seem to be a little bit on the same side. Now they may be Kickstarter exclusives only, and we haven't played them yet. Are the extra Hellboy characters that come with the Agent Pledge?
So the 4 that we played with, I felt distinct, and each offered something to different elements of the game, and felt like they were all useful for something, which I can appreciate. I mean,
and just to go back to what you're saying, sort of jump in there, I really like what you're saying about all 4 characters feeling distinct, because when we played all 4 of them together, each one was better at different things. Johan was the character that we were trying to primarily get to examine things. Hellboy was our sort of ranged melee fighter. Liz is taking everyone out from the back, and then Abe is kind of your more mixed all-rounder, but he can't afford to actually get in range of any of the villains because his defense was pretty terrible.
Yeah. So he could sprint through stuff.
Yeah.
So for that felt interesting. I mean, we've played other games recently where, a couple of the characters definitely felt stronger than others. So it was fun that the characters each had something to offer to the different elements of the campaign. Besides that, for me, from a design perspective of the game, I mean, we talked about this. One of the things I said is, I personally don't love the art, but you like it.
Well, the art is actually something that I would say is a little bit a double-edged sword. Because where do I like the art? I like the art on the character boards. I like the art that you can see on the box. I enjoyed that same art on the Doom cards, because that is Mike Mignola's art. That's the art of Hellboy. And I thought that it looks really cool. That being said, the tiles are incredibly bland. It's Mike Mignola style art for tiles, and they're just kind of blah. After playing games like Village Attacks, Imperial Assault, Descent, we've just seen so many tiles and components that have a lot more flavor to them and even do a better job at evoking that feel. So that's the downside of the art. I like it, but I don't like it because I'm not sure if it was maybe the right choice to do across the board. But you will definitely feel like you are in the comic book universe of Hellboy. So I've got to give it more of a plus, but I don't necessarily love it overall.
Okay, well, for me, it's not my style. I mean, when I say I think a game is pretty or I love the art, it's not...
Or delicious dice.
Yeah, it's not really this style. I can appreciate, as you're telling me, that it's comic book style, but it's not my style. I did like the different types of dice, the red, orange, yellow dice.
And the upgrading to the black die. We didn't do that very often, but the ability to upgrade and downgrade your dice is something that I don't think we've seen in really any other game that we played, and it made a big difference. Specifically in that first mission, we were almost in trouble with that frog monster, but since Hellboy has this nice big hand cannon and upgrading those dice, and with Abe being adjacent and able to help him out, it let us handle that mission with not too much difficulty.
Though it was really frustrating to roll 3 yellow dice and to get 3 blanks, but
yeah, the yellow dice are pretty terrible.
Yeah. If you have a yellow ability, don't count on it.
Oh, it's Hellboy's shoot ability. It's yellow, but he gets that extra 5 damage. You really want to upgrade his dice if he's going to shoot something. Or ideally, it's a big monster, and someone else can upgrade your dice to help you shoot something.
So for that, I mean, I enjoyed the mechanics and how you attack and how the game interacts and the story.
What did you think about actually the investigating for clues and actually having to gather information? That's something that we've never really played with in another game, or at least both of us. definitely have to do a little bit of that in Legends of Endor, where the channel started with our reviews actually. So
I thought it was interesting. I mean, there are a couple places where you're either, I guess maybe we were lucky. You don't necessarily.
you rolled very well.
Well, no, but
overall.
I'm not talking about that. For the investigation, I guess we ended up going the right way most times, where we don't end up having to explore the entire board, that we get to what we're looking
No,
for.
actually, you're quite right. We played the scenario with a missing agent, and I think we only explored half the map. That scenario was beyond easy. I know we did make a few small rules mistakes that did make it a lot easier, but in the end, it was we got there, found the boss, and then we're like, huh, we're going to complete our objective. You thought it was going to be more difficult, and then we counted out. We're like, oh, yeah. I was a little disappointing, but you also rolled like a beast.
I was gonna say, I mean, I would say yes, you, as you did say, we did one small mistake that might have slowed us down a little bit. But that being said, I still found this game is not the hardest game we've played. It definitely, and I don't know, maybe as we go along in the different, I mean,
We haven't done anything on hard difficulty yet.
We've just done medium.
Nor have we used any of the more difficult Deck of Doom cards. And that's one thing where I would say that we're probably feeling that's a little bit on the easier side, mainly because we do play a lot of cooperative games, and this has some really nice flexibility to it, which if Julie doesn't talk about, I'll talk about in a moment. But I do agree with you, it did not feel like the most challenging. I do think some of the rules mistakes that we made in our initial playthrough, which was probably the worst one, and then afterwards we made only really like a tiny mistake, it still wouldn't have necessarily done enough damage to us to have led to us losing the mission. Probably would have added another 15 minutes or so and made things a little bit more challenging, but I could not see us actually failing to complete the mission.
I think that's all I had to say about the game, really. So if you have something to add, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I do have a few things to add, and I want to talk about why I think it felt a little bit more on the easier side. And I've seen some comments from people saying the game is very difficult when you're trying it solo. If you're trying it solo, I'd almost say go up to 4 characters, because at 2 characters, I thought the game was far more challenging than at 4. Just the ability to clear all of the enemies seems to be, you seem to have a much higher chance of doing that with 4 characters versus 2. So a couple good rolls, and you're actually going to find yourself ahead, despite the fact that you may have events happening on the pending Doom track coming up a lot sooner. That being said, just to reiterate what I did say, we got very lucky with the Deck of Doom cards. There was quite a few that we drew that did not even advance the Doom track. So I think that's definitely the biggest difference for us.
I think also, as Jason said, though I did roll a couple blanks, I was rolling very well. Yes,
primarily bad defense rolls.
Yes, but was attacking monsters like crazy.
Yeah, well, when you get even when we made a mistake, and I'm like, we played that wrong, but you still had 2 3s and a 2 on like half of your rolls to kill monsters, meaning that we might have done a little excess damage because we misinterpreted a rule. Yet you still would have killed them on every roll. But going back to what Julie said about working together, the cooperative nature of the game, and how just the way the game plays, that's where I think we found the game a little easier because of how much we've spent playing cooperative games together, was the fact that there is no set turn. And I really love that about the game. The fact that each character can take an action, you can see how it goes. There's a lot of improvisation. There's so many different things that you can do by working together, that with 4 characters trying to do everything, I think you're going to have a lot better chance of succeeding, especially by getting some characters that have some stronger abilities. For example, Liz is not the best at investigating, so I wouldn't really want to have Hellboy and Liz necessarily paired up together. Hellboy seems to pair very well as 2 players with Abe Sapien. But you're getting to bring 4 characters with 4 different expertise all together, and it just worked very well for us. And Julie would often maybe start off with doing something, be like, okay, I'm going to hit this guy. I'm going to maybe light this area on fire with Liz. Okay, I've damaged him, damaged the other guy. And Hellboy would come along with his spear, clean things up. And that's one thing you didn't mention. The requisition cards make a big difference in the game. So don't underestimate them. Use the right ones. Gotta say it again, the Ancient Spear for Hellboy, I think, for me, is just a must. I can't imagine playing a strong, heavy-hitting melee character without that one credit card. Because it just made things so much easier. I'd have that free action, have an encounter, and be like, oh, there's a minion there? Whack, whack, doing massive amounts of damage. Oh, Hellboy hits like a truck. So that's one of the things that I did really like. That being said, I'm going to talk about some negatives that I do have with the game. And there are some issues with the rules. I would say that all the rules are there, but with all the different components that you have in the game, all the different cards, not everything works well together. Specifically in the Conqueror Worm scenario, I'm not going to spoil what happens, but we had to add a room where this room was then added to the map. By following the rules, the big bad wasn't even able to actually chase us because they were actually trapped in their starting location. We did some house rules, some modifications. Now it's possible that there are some rules out there in Errata Online, but I looked at it, Julie's like, you gotta be kidding me. And then she looked at the rules, she's like, no, actually you followed step by step. Technically the boss can't leave this room. And she was like, that makes no sense. So we had the boss chase us and we were still able to complete the scenario, but it was definitely a lot more tense doing it that way. So keep that in mind. You might find a little bit of wonkiness because of the amount of content. And the other thing I have to say is, I don't know if I love this big box. The art's beautiful, everything's in here, but the fact that I got a retail edition rulebook, not even a page of Kickstarter content as to what we're getting, is an absolute. To me, it's a joke. It really upsets me. It means that we were trying to set up the game the first time. We burned a lot of time trying to figure out what's this, what's that. Are these the tokens that I'm looking for? Is something missing from the game? Do I need to contact Mantic? Now there's been some stuff put out online, but at the cost of this game for a Kickstarter, I get you want to just print one copy of the rulebook. That's fine. There should have been a sheet saying, here's what you get in your Kickstarter content. One piece of paper. Didn't have to be glossy, didn't have to be anything. Could have just been a standard piece of printer paper and it would have saved us what? Half hour, 45 minutes of our life.
And a fair bit of frustration.
Yeah, a lot of frustration. And that is something that I don't like. Also, the size of the box means this thing doesn't really fit well anywhere. And it's nice to have a box where I can fit a lot of the components. But I guess if I leaned it down the other way, it might be able to fit, but it's awkward and something that I'm not really a big fan of. Other than that, I think we've really talked about pretty much all the gameplay elements. We started doing more of a free-form discussion now, and I can't really think of anything that I want to add. Just
there was, I think, just one thing from my perspective, from a real book. There's a couple of different times that the rules just didn't seem to make sense in that particular circumstance of something that happened, and you're like, okay, I guess we should have done it that way. And I mean, as you said, maybe it's because of the sheer quantity, of content that there was, but it makes it difficult. And I mean, as you go, then you're like, okay, that's the way that's going to work. But that was a little bit of a disappointment for me as well.
No, and actually, I think, as you say, it's due to sheer the quantity of content. Like, we completely missed a rule on the Nazi officers when we were playing with them. And there's a rule that's written in the attack section that affects them spawning. And there's nothing on the card to indicate that there is a spawn rule. Should have probably read the whole card, but after playing through multiple scenarios, being used to only having to look at this section of the card when something is going to attack, and to be quite honest, that didn't really happen very often besides our first playthrough with the frog monsters. We were very efficient at aggressively getting rid of the minions, and I think that made the game a lot easier. And actually, that just comes down to strategy. Clearing minions, clearing infernos and frog swarms, potentially slowing down, taking your time. Don't open doors when you're not ready to necessarily start having encounters is something that I think we learned that from Descent, with a few times where we made that mistake. Will make your game experience a lot easier. Don't be afraid to slow down. Don't be afraid to rest. You got to take your time and do things properly and put your heroes in a situation where they can succeed. Now, looking at the rule book, once again, all the information's there, but I would say that it's not necessarily easily accessible. I dislike the fact that when it comes to like the way enemies will act, they're written like brawler, range. You've got to, at least for the first few times, obviously you're going to learn it, you got to look to a page in the rule book. The rules for fire, now fire damage, effects, everything is a rule in the book. It's not something that's necessarily written on like the cards and abilities that do fire damage, which can be a little frustrating more for new players, especially if you give a player a card and you're not paying attention to it. Being the person that read the rules, they might just try to take actions and do things, and the game should be a little bit more difficult, but you're not actually realizing it. But everything's there. It's well structured. It's not a difficult process to learn the game. The tutorial is very good, and overall, I think we've got an enjoyable game here.
Yep.
And I don't think there's really that much more to add. This is definitely a game that I'm happy to have on my shelf, so much so that they announced that they already had a new expansion, and we already ordered it. We're definitely going to be going through the whole game. Oh, wait. One last thing, because I don't think either of us talked about this, and it was one of the things that we both really liked. Even your dad liked it when I showed him the detail. The miniatures. The miniatures are fantastic. And for that alone, if you're a Hellboy fan and you want detailed Hellboy figures, these are great. What did you think of the minis?
Yeah, I thought they're pretty good.
Just pretty good. I mean, Hellboy's got his little cross on there. I thought it was really cool. And these are fantastic to paint. If you like painting minis...
See, that's where he's showing his geek side a little bit more.
Hey, you like painting. Maybe I should get you to start painting characters.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Oh,
I don't have that patience. Okay, so time for your rating.
My rating. So I'm going first?
Yes.
Now, it's a little tricky for me because I'm hesitating. This is definitely a recommend on my scale, but I'm hesitating a little bit between a 7 and an 8 in terms of a cooperative game, just because of some of the frustrations. One of the reasons why I'm leaning almost towards a 7 is because of the amount of content and the amount of time I wasted. That's me being just a little petty. I think I'm going to say 7.5. All around, solid game. Not that difficult to set up, not that difficult to tear down. Primarily, it's just sorting through the amount of content that makes things more challenging.
It's a 7 for me. I mean, maybe it's because it's not my favorite IP. I mean, I can enjoy it. But
well, it's understandable. I mean, you admitted on our last big review for Lord of the Rings, you're like, yeah, this got an IP boost bump of a point for me.
Yeah. So this, from a game perspective, there's some things, there's some things that I enjoyed. There's some things that frustrated me a little bit. It's still a solid 7. All
right. So, Julie, what can people now do?
You can like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification button. Don't hesitate to leave us some comments. We're always happy to hear from you. Also, I'm going to steal Jason's line and say, don't forget to follow our social media feed. You can see the information below: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Jason's already posted some pictures of Hellboy, so I'm sure
there'll be more coming the day this releases.
So you can do that as well.
And for those of you wondering when we're going to do a more detailed how to play. Now, for the gameplay overview, there are probably a few small errors. Like I said when I started doing it, it was just an overview to give you an idea as to how to play the game. I will be doing a full how to play playthrough of the first mission. Now, I don't know if Julie's going to join me on that. The first mission is not that long. It may or may not be a solo playthrough. We'll see how she's feeling this weekend.
Okay. So on that note, Jason, what time is it?
It's time to grab our drinks, grab our best friend, and we're going to keep investigating paranormal events.
And we're going to keep playing games.
Definitely going to keep playing games. So, any new characters you want to try next time?
I didn't even look at the other characters, love.
Well, I can be Hellboy, and you can be Hellboy.
We could both be Hellboy?
We could both be Hellboy.
Okay.